out that one of the first things that comes out of her mouth when she's in the hospital, she's taken off the ventilator, she says, "Do I have a lawyer?" Okay.
On January 23, 2023, a mother of 3 sat in her basement with exercise bands wrapped around her hands. 3 children lay dead beside her. She had sent her husband to the furthest restaurant they had ever ordered from. She sent him to CVS for a prescription. She waited for him to leave.
The 3 children went through before their deaths. They were lured to the basement by Mommy, who orchestrated her husband leaving home to go to the furthest away restaurant, a restaurant they had never gotten takeout from before, ever, then sent him to, I think it was CVS pharmacy, to get a prescription, waited for him to leave to kill the children. There he is wandering around the CVS looking for whatever the prescription was, which in my world shows intent and premeditation.
And then she did what no mother is supposed to do. She strangled her children one by one with stretchy elastic bands that required force, exertion, and time.
Mommy's exercise bands were used to strangle the 3 children.
Then she jumped from a second-story window and survived. When she woke up in the hospital, still on a ventilator, still paralyzed from the waist down, she didn't ask about her children. She didn't ask if they were alive. She asked about a lawyer.
Where is my family? Did she say? Did I kill the children? Did they survive? Where are my babies? Anything like that.
The doctor did not testify that she wrote down any of those.
So that would be a no.
Correct. She wrote, "I feel horrified."
Do I have a lawyer? That was her first question.
So one of her doctors testified that she was actually writing answers on a piece of paper because she had all these tubes in her mouth. She was hooked up to all these different pieces of equipment. And she wrote that she felt horrified. And then she asked, where is her family? And then one of the first things she did ask is, do I need a lawyer? And that is something that the jurors heard last.
Imagine a stage, a courtroom stage with 2 opposing actors. On one side, a prosecutor holding a timeline and a confession. On the other, a defense attorney holding a psychiatric report and a diagnosis. The audience is the jury. The script is the evidence. And the central question of the play is this: did the defendant commit murder, or did mental illness commit the murder through her? That is the Lindsay Clancy case. The facts are not in dispute. She killed her children. She admits she killed her children. Her defense attorney does not deny the act. The only question is whether she was legally insane at the time she did it. And at the center of that question stands a psychiatrist, a medication, and a system that may have failed everyone. Before we go deeper into what the evidence actually shows, make sure you're subscribed to Shadow Jury Archives, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the facts. The mother is Lindsay Clancy. She is a nurse. She is a wife. She is a mother of 3. She is also the person who killed her children. The children are Cora, age 5, Dawson, age 3, and Callan, an infant of 8 months. They were strangled with exercise bands. Their bodies were found in the basement of the family home.
You're hearing parts of the 911 dispatch call after 3 little tots, 1 an infant, all found strangled dead.
Cora and Callan were discovered together. Dawson was found across the room in his father's home office, as if he had tried to run.
Oldest boy actually tried to run. That would be Dawson. He was found dead in his father's office, which was also in the basement.
He had tried to escape. He had tried to get away from his mother.
What did they endure? What does a human endure when they are strangled, much less face down from behind by their mother, who is tightly gripping exercise bands to kill them?
And his mother followed him. The bands were tied differently around Dawson's neck, more tightly, more deliberately.
Across the room in an office that Patrick Clancy was using to work from home. But you know, Nancy, the bands were tied so differently around Dawson's neck that the bands were not pulled off by Patrick as easy as the other ones, where he had to pull it out around his Dawson's head. So this was a plan of action that Lindsay Clancy factored in all day long to get her husband out of the house and to stay gone long enough for her to...
The father, Patrick Clancy, returned home to find his house eerily quiet. He called out. No one answered.
Yeah, the house is really quiet.
Is that unusual?
Yeah.
And when you realized it was really quiet, what did you do?
I called out.
And who did you call out to?
Everyone.
Did anyone answer?
No. I saw Cora.
And how did she look?
She had a band around her neck.
And was that an exercise band?
Yeah.
And do you recall whether she was, what position she was in, whether face up or face down?
She's face down.
And when you saw her in that condition, what did you do?
I immediately ran over and tried to take the band off.
Were you able to get the band off?
Yeah.
Was she responsive?
No. I saw Callan.
And where was he?
He was next to her.
And how did he appear?
He had a band around his neck.
Sorry?
He had a band around his neck.
And did you remove that as well?
Yeah.
And do you recall what position he was in?
Same as Cora.
He found his daughter with a band around her neck. He found his son. He found his other son. He tried to remove the bands. It was too late. He knew they were gone. The defense attorney is Kevin Reddington. He is a veteran trial lawyer, decades of experience. He has done this before, and his argument is simple. Lindsay Clancy was not in control of her actions. She was suffering from postpartum psychosis. She had been seeking help. She had been prescribed medication. She had been seeing a psychiatrist, and that psychiatrist, Dr. Jennifer Tufts, had failed her. The defense points to the medication, Zoloft, and SSRI, a medication with a black box warning from the FDA, a warning that says it may increase the risk of suicidal and homicidal ideation in young adults. Lindsay was 29 years old. She was 3 years past the FDA's cutoff. But the defense attorney asked the question that hangs in the air like a guillotine blade. If a drug increases the risk of suicide in a 24-year-old, can it not increase the risk of homicide in a 29-year-old? The prosecution says yes, it can, but that doesn't excuse her. She planned it. She sent her husband away. She waited for him to leave. She chose a restaurant they had never ordered from before, the furthest away. She sent him to CVS for a prescription. She made sure he would be gone long enough. That is premeditation. That is intent. That is murder.
Nancy, what we have found out in court is that Lindsay Clancy at least planned the events of the day enough early on. If you remember, early on, Lindsay Clancy texted Patrick about getting dinner from a takeout place. Didn't say which one, but that was early in the day. Are you in for takeout later on? So the plan begins then. Then when it comes time to send Patrick Clancy away from the home, Lindsay Clancy orders the takeout from a restaurant they've never used before, and that is the furthest away from their home, but still realistic to possibly use. Then she adds going by CVS to pick up some medication. Patrick Clancy is confused and calls Lindsay Clancy while he's at CVS, Nancy. And the reason I'm pointing this out is that Lindsay Clancy got Patrick away from the home and was planning to do that earlier in the day.
The defense says no. She was not in control. She was not herself.
I think she was floridly psychotic, and you cannot convince me otherwise. We have a violence-free history, a happy mother, and she faked going to all these doctors, getting all these medications, faked being completely insane, faked having all of this anxiety, faked thoughts and harm for her children, then all of a sudden premeditated, killed her 3 kids in window.
She had been deteriorating for months. Her journal entries reveal a woman in agony.
You know what's funny? And this is how it goes every trial, right? The prosecution and the defense focus on very different things when it came to that journal. The prosecution focused on how Lindsay was exhausted. She was saying how she desperately needs a break. At one point, she wrote in her journal that she feels like she needs a break so badly that her brain is making her body sick. She said, my mind never shuts off. She said, I feel disconnected with my baby. I'm so desperate for a mental break from taking care of everyone. And they focused on, her meticulously documenting her children's sleep schedules. They're trying to show that she was a controlling mother. The defense, on the other hand, and this goes back to her defense attorney, Kevin Reddington, it seems he's taking this case very personally. He reads an excerpt from the diary where she says, "I want to be well." And his voice even choked up when he read that. He mentions how she wrote she has horrible insomnia, anxiety.
My mind never shuts off. I feel disconnected with my baby. I'm so desperate for a mental break from taking care of everyone. She wrote that she wanted to be well. She wrote that she had horrible insomnia, anxiety, and depression. She was crying out for help, and the help she received was medication that may have pushed her over the edge. The psychiatrist, Dr. Jennifer Tufts, is a young woman. She began practicing independently in August of 2022. She met Lindsay Clancy in September of 2022. That means she had been on her own, treating patients with her full credentials for a little more than 1 month. 1 month. And in that month, how many patients had she treated for postpartum psychosis? None, because it's rare, she said. But it exists. How many patients had she treated for postpartum depression in that month? Maybe a couple. She couldn't remember. She said she had a special interest in perinatal psychiatry. But when the lawyer asked her what she put in her ad, she said she didn't recall. She didn't spend a lot of time on her website. She prescribed Zoloft. She prescribed other medications. She increased the dose of one medication, Amitriptyline, just days before the murders. The defense attorney asked her directly, "It increased the Amitriptyline." Yes, that pushed her over the edge, didn't it? The doctor's response was 3 words. "I don't think so." But what did the doctor see? What did she know? She never saw her patient in person. Not once. 14 appointments, all telemedicine. She never saw her legs bouncing with anxiety. She never saw her hands wringing. She never saw the physical manifestations of distress that a trained psychiatrist might recognize in a room. She saw a face on a screen. She heard a voice. She listened, and she prescribed. The patient told her she couldn't sleep. She told her she was anxious. She told her she had thoughts, not suicidal thoughts exactly, but she was close to it. She was fearful. She was dwelling on it. And the doctor prescribed a medication that can cause trouble sleeping. She prescribed a medication with a black box warning for suicidal and homicidal ideation. She did not use the specialized screening test for postpartum depression. She used a general one. She did not recommend a hospital evaluation. She did not reach out to her family. She did not do anything to change the course of what was coming. Here is the ticking clock moment. What happens when a doctor prescribes a medication that can cause homicidal ideation to a patient who is already deteriorating? What happens when that patient's family is not contacted, when she is not hospitalized, when the warning signs are all there and nobody acts? What happens when the day after the dose is increased, 3 children are dead? The clock was ticking for Lindsay Clancy, but nobody was watching the time. The doctor listened to her symptoms and prescribed more medication. The patient took the medication, and the next day, something inside her broke. The defense wants the jury to believe that the medication pushed her over the edge. The prosecution wants the jury to believe that she was in control. And the truth is somewhere in the middle. The evidence is public. The testimony is public. The medical records are public. You can read them. You can see the prescriptions. You can see the dates. You can see the symptoms that Lindsay reported and the doctor's response. And then you can ask yourself one question. If a doctor prescribes a medication with a black box warning for homicidal ideation to a patient who is already deteriorating, is that treatment or is that negligence? Read the records, read the FDA warning, read the testimony, and then decide for yourself who is to blame. The file is public. The records are public. The testimony is public. And the answer to that question is in the courtroom transcripts. Read the fine print. Read the warning labels. Read the checkboxes. And then decide for yourself who failed whom, and who will answer for it. Thank you for watching. If this story made you think, hit like, share this with someone who needs to see it, subscribe to Shadow Jury Archives, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next deep dive. We follow the facts so you can see the truth.